Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. And this week, we're taking a look at a guitar sound that, near enough overnight, would redefine the sound of rock and roll. We're of course talking about a Les Paul into a Marshall. Now the year is 1966, and suffice to say, it's an eventful one, especially here in Great Britain. London is swinging, England would win the World Cup, pirate radio is at its height, Rick Astley is born, as is, more importantly, future Arsenal captain Tony Adams. And in musical terms, on the world stage, it's no less frantic. The Kinks are lazing on a sunny afternoon, the Stones are painting it black, and Bob Dylan is having visions of Joanna. Otis Redding would quite literally write the dictionary of soul, and the Beatles and the Beach Boys were busy hashing it out as to whether tomorrow, or God only knows. And then, in July of 1966, in a small North London studio, something would happen that would change the sound of electric guitar forever. Eric Clapton had initially joined John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers in April of 1965, but in a manner befitting a band that over the years have had well over 100 different lineups, very quickly left again to embark on an ill-fated tour of Greece. Eric, of course, having not long left the Yardbirds, shunning the allure of chart success in pursuit of a more real, gritty Chicago blues sound. But after that tour of Greece very quickly went south, Eric had to resort to subterfuge, armed with his Gibson Les Paul, to get back to the UK. And upon arriving back in Britain, very quickly rejoined the Bluesbreakers. However, there was a problem. In the melee of getting out of Greece, his Marshall JTM 45 and accompanying 4x12 cab had been left behind. Now, this may well be the origin of the widely recounted, albeit apocryphal tale, that it was Eric's search for a guitar amp that would fit in the boot of his car that would inspire Jim Marshall to design the Marshall combo. But in reality, Marshall already introduced two combos by this point. The 1962, a 2x12 open back, and the 1961, a 4x10 closed back, both introduced to compete with the ever-successful Vox AC30. Still, let's not let the truth get in the way of a good story, and either way, Eric bought one on tick to keep up with the incredibly hectic touring schedule that the Bluesbreakers had coming up. And it was around this period that Clapton's God graffiti started appearing all over London. And by May of 1966, the band were ready to hit the studio to record an album. The album, produced by Mike Vernon and recorded at Decca Studios in West Hampstead, North London, was set to change the face of rock guitar forever. Eric's Les Paul into a Marshall, crucially at the type of levels that he'd become accustomed to playing at in a live scenario, was like nothing captured on tape before, and as you can imagine, presented a fair few issues for the engineers on that record, as Eric describes in this next clip. We'd been on the road for long enough to just go in and play our set, but in that period there were technicians doing the recording that just came up to your amp with the microphone and stuck it 2 inches away from the front. And it seemed to me that if you wanted to get that atmosphere that we were getting in the club, you needed it to sound like you were in the audience, 10 feet away, not 3 inches. And so when the guy did that on the day that we went in to record, I said, "Excuse me, I don't want it there, put it over there." He said, "Well, you're making our job really difficult." And I said, "I don't care. That's the way I want it." Not unsurprisingly, for an album that's had so much influence in the guitar world, you could say there's been a fair amount of interest in regard to not only what gear Eric used on that record, but is it possible to recreate it? So I thought we'd make for an interesting experiment. Now, in regard to the amp, we can pretty much conclusively say, thanks to high-res photos taken at the recording sessions, that Eric was using a 1962 Series 2 JTM 45 combo, the 2x12 version. You can say pretty conclusively that it is the Series 2 from the lighter grill cloth. And of course, this is an amp that over the years Marshall have continued to re-release and reissue, henceforth known as the Bluesbreaker amp. Now, unfortunately, I don't have one of these to hand, but I do have the next best thing. A hand-built, beautifully handmade JTM 45 clone. Sounds incredible. I'm going to be running it through a UA aux box, just so I'm not killing people and local wildlife within a 40-mile radius. Of course, however, there is heated debate in regard to whether Eric's Les Paul use on that album was a 1960 burst or a 1959. Eric's made various comments over the years about the slimmer neck profile, which leads you to the conclusion that it could well have been a 60, but high-res photos very clearly show the earlier 59-style knobs, which of course leads to a different conclusion. One possibility is that it belongs to a very small group of guitars manufactured in very early 1960, known as 00 serial numbers, made, of course, in 1960, but using earlier 59 specs. Now, as luck would have it, I would have one of those very guitars here today, very kindly loaned to me by Andrew Raymond, the owner of Vintage and Rare Guitars in Bath. I'm very fortunate to be able to use it in today's video. The only remaining mystery then, of course, being, did Eric use a Dallas Rangemaster treble booster? It's pretty synonymous with the Beano album at this point, but the photographic evidence from the sessions would suggest that you are literally just hearing a Les Paul into a Marshall. Try and settle the debate once and for all. I've got hold of this great little Rangemaster clone, so I'll be trying it with and without. Just try and get to the bottom of it once and for all. So to kick things off, we've got the volume on the amp. Let's put it a hair under halfway, I guess. We're getting into sort of edge breakup territory pretty quickly. Really touch responsive. If you dig in, you get kind of getting into AC/DC territory, I guess, but if you play lightly, feels like the Bluesbreaker tone probably had a hair more gain than that, I guess. So if we push the volume up to around about 2 o'clock, I guess, see where that gets us. Now in the room, that feels like a little bit too much, so I'm going to back that back to about 1 o'clock. Yeah, that's kind of the territory, I guess. It's that sort of aggressive, stinging kind of tone, still with quite a lot of warmth, actually. In terms of gain, that kind of feels like we're getting in the right ballpark, but for the sake of argument, if we kick on the Rangemaster, or treble booster I should say, clone, we get a fair amount of gain boost there, so we back the volume on the amp off to compensate. It's a difficult one. I think in terms of kind of gain characteristic, this more than enough gain in this amp to get into the kind of Clapton ballpark. There is, I can see a kind of like slight flutiness coming from that Rangemaster, which is kind of vaguely reminiscent of what I'm hearing on the recording, but there's so many permutations or variables in that signal chain, whether it's the limiters, whether it's the pre's, whether it's the compressors they use, the tape, whatever. So many things could have a kind of big tonal impact there, I guess. It's hard to say where that came from. But for me in the room, I think probably the amp, but again, that's sort of comes down to the speaker that we're using here. So if we flick that on and off again. Yeah, that definitely feels more like the kind of, where it should be. I think the last thing I would mention then, which felt like it was getting more in the ballpark, is that middle position, which again, there's photographic evidence from those sessions. You can see Clapton using that middle position. And the intro, at least, of Steppin Out for me feels like very much the middle position, with the neck pickup volume backed off very slightly, but the bridge pickup up full. So bridge pickup is on its own. Middle position. Really subtle, but I think it does make a... Whatever the case, Eric's playing on the Beano album would set a new precedent for electric guitar playing in terms of style, taste and tone. And in the months and years that followed, guitarists the world over would flock to get their own Gibson and Marshall. Whether we're talking Jimmy Page, Paul Kossoff, Peter Green, Jeff Beck, Angus Young, Tony Iommi, Gary Moore, Bernie Marsden, Slash, Zach Wilde, Joe Bonamassa. The list is quite literally endless, and it's incredible to think that the genesis of that very simple combination can be traced all the way back to a small North London studio in 1966. As ever, I'm Chris Buck. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next week for another episode of Friday Fretworks. Cheers guys, take care, I'll see you soon.